Whispers presents you 5 people confess the scariest moments they've ever lived through, and they'll keep you up at night. Because Halloween is just around the corner and everyone wants to give me nightmares, obviously. What better pastime to celebrate the Halloween spirit than sharing scary, ghost stories that have been passed down for generations? But, let's face it, we've all heard the majority of the good ones. So, instead of hearing the same stories that you heard at camp as a kid, how about some real stories from real people that'll scare the SHT out of you? 1. Young and lucky, kinda creepy at the time, but scary afterward. A long time ago, driving from Bowral to Berrima in New South Wales, a state in Australia, my wife and I were flagged down by a guy asking to borrow a car jack because his van, which he said was his sister's, and yes it was white, had a flat and his jack didn't work. The guy was creepy and we just said nah mate and took off. A while later we saw the photo of the serial killer Ivan Milat, who had been caught by then. Pretty sure it was him and the van fitted. 2. Phobos. I went on a guided cemetery tour at night. About 6 or 7 of us were standing around a tomb listening to the story of how the inhabitant had killed himself with a gun when all of a sudden, there was a big flash and the whole sky lit up green with smaller flashes. We found out later that we had witnessed a meteor breaking up. So the tour guide takes a moment, recovers from the surprise, and continues his story about how some decades after the poor chap had killed himself, someone broke into his tomb and stole his skull. We then moved on and walked further into the cemetery when we were startled by a loud bang. We shrugged it off as a car backfiring, laughed nervously at how on edge we were, and continued the tour. Shortly after, we hear a couple more bangs in quick succession, and one of the tour party commented that they were pretty sure they were gunshots. There was another bang, closer. Definitely a gunshot. Then we saw a light in between some of the headstones, and I kid you not, we saw the figure of a man carrying a shotgun, slowly coming from the direction of the tomb we had just been at. We froze. I looked over to the tour guide, thinking it was some prank he plays on all his customers, but he was completely white and was backing away. It was a man with a shotgun and he was walking towards us. He lifted a flashlight and pointed it directly at us. Several of us ducked behind the headstones as he yelled, "Get out of here. What the hell are you doing in this place?" Turns out the city council pays some guy to shoot possums in the cemetery and they forgot to warn the tour company. 3. Happy_go_lucky11. Growing up, my mom was a bartender. She was a single parent, so I took care of my little brother most nights. One night while I was making dinner, I kept hearing a strange whistling sound, but I didn't think much of it because it was storming pretty hard outside. But the whistling continued and it started to sound more like a melody than whistling from a storm. I started to get a little freaked out and asking my little brother if he was hearing it too. He wasn't. Eventually the whistling stops, but it's still storming pretty badly. Fast forward to the end of the night when I'm going to bed. I'm climbing up the ladder of my bunk bed and my TV shuts off. I think maybe the power went out, but the hallway light is still on. I try to turn it back on and nothing happens, so I reach around my TV stand and realize that it's been unplugged. At the same time I hear the whistling, only this time it's not in the distance. It sounded like someone was whistling directly into my ear. I could almost feel their breath. It sent chills down my spine. It still sends chills down my spine. At that moment I took off running out of our house screaming. We lived in an apartment with 3 other units, so I woke the neighbors above us. They were a younger couple with 2 kids and offered to come to check out our house. I could tell at the time the guy thought I was just a stupid kid hearing things but was trying to make me feel better. My brother and I waited outside of our apartment while he went inside to check it out for us. After a few minutes he came back and he seemed a little agitated and asked if you're playing a prank on him. This really scared me and I told him we weren't playing a prank on him. He could probably see we were telling the truth by our faces, because I could see the fear roll over his face. He said he looked everywhere and did not find anyone, but was convinced someone was in our home. They invited us to stay in their apartment until my mom was home from work because they didn't feel comfortable with us staying alone. I never heard the whistling again, but so many other strange things happened to my brother and me in that apartment. I'm convinced it was haunted. I'm not sure if the story will be scary to any of you, but that was the most terrified I've ever been in my life. 4. Gigglebutts. In college, I went to Champaign, Illinois, and saw a big gigantic. Afterward, my boyfriend and I stopped to get gas and I was thirsty as hell for non-venue priced beverages, so I went into the little shop while he filled up the car. It was 1 a.m. so the shop was deserted except me and the cashier, whom I greeted casually and walked to the back giant wall of refreshments. I'm staring and pondering for a while before I realize the guy has made his way over and is staring intently from a few feet away. Do I look like Jonathan Taylor Thomas? He asks. What? I answer, not entirely sharp after a concert and wondering if I missed something. Jonathan Taylor Thomas. A lot of people say I look like him. I should pause the story here to tell you that this 20 or 30-something gentleman bore zero resemblance to the preteen hunk of the 90s. This guy was pale, dark hair, kind of mushy face with no distinctive qualities. I'd compare him to maybe a younger Lutz from 30 Rock. Anyway, I'm staring at him and getting nervous and not sure what to say. I guess. I stammer, hoping this will end the line of questioning. Oh. In what way? What? I grab a Sprite BC. I am now getting a little freaked out and do not have the luxury of deliberating any longer. This guy has not cracked a smile and something just seems very, very off. We walk to the register and he continues. In what ways do I look like Jonathan Taylor Thomas, specifically? He's ringing me up and I'm looking through my bag for my wallet trying to think of a competent answer. In the nose? I guess. He seems relieved. That's when my boyfriend appears at the glass door and trance a few feet away. He tries to open it. It's been locked. All the blood drains out of my face and I start feeling very, very sick. He seems surprised by my boyfriend's presence and looks at me, realizing whatever he had in mind for me is no longer in the cards. Without a word, he unlocks the door and I GTFO. My boyfriend is confused and I sit in the car and breathe and drink my Sprite and tell him what happened and we both shiver the rest of the way home. And that's the end of the Jonathan Taylor Thomas story. 5. Damn Loch Ness Monster. I had just gotten home from the gym and was exhausted. I badly needed to shower/sleep, so I began to head upstairs. As soon as my bedroom door came into view, what I can only describe as a dark and humanoid-looking silhouette creeped out of view from the side of my door frame. I knew 100% that I had seen something and wasn't too keen on investigating it. I grabbed a knife from my kitchen, convinced myself that I was a grown-ass man, counted down from 5, kicked my halfway closed bedroom door all the way open, and started yelling like a maniac. I was home alone. I didn't find anything or anyone. I checked each closet thoroughly, under the bed, etc., the usual fuck that places. I closed my door out of habit and began to get undressed when the only light in my room burned out. It was absolutely pitch black. Considering how positive I was that I had seen something earlier, I promptly began to freak the fuck out. I had this sense of dread and absolute impending doom. I felt like there was a hand about 2 inches away from the back of my neck. It was such a vivid and terrifying feeling. I bolted in the direction of my door after about 5 to 10 seconds of being too afraid to act and got the fuck out of my house until the rest of my family came home.